Today I'm going to review Mega Man: The Wily Wars, released on the Sega Genesis on December 31st, 1994. The plot sees Dr. Wily using time travel to have Mega Man go through his adventures again from the first three mainline entries. North America surprisingly never got a physical release of this, seeing as this was only available via the Sega channel. Because of this, all of the entries are the Japanese versions of the games. For example, the title screen for Mega Man 1 matches exactly what the Japanese version looked like, and similarly, there's no difficulty setting for Mega Man 2, just like Japan's version as well. It defaults at the difficult setting. This entry also was the first time that Mega Man had not appeared on a Nintendo system, as well as having its development mostly outsourced. The release schedule saw this release right after Mega Man 6 on the NES in 1993, Mega Man 5 on the Game Boy in 1994, but before Mega Man 7 in 1995. So funny enough, I actually heard of this game playing an untranslated version of Rockman and Forte via emulation. That was a Super Famicom game released in 1998, featuring sprite assets from Mega Man 8, though used much better. There's a collectible CD system in it that allows Mega Man or Rockman to view previous Robot Masters and other information. When I managed to collect and view these, I didn't recognize three of the Robot Masters with names like Buster Rod, Mega Water, and Hyperstorm. That's because these three come from additional content of Mega Man Wily Wars. When players beat all three Mega Man games, it unlocks Wily's Tower, where they must battle these three. Now, when I first played Wily Wars via emulation about 10 to 15 years ago, I really didn't like it, because the physics felt different and the music was the tinny Genesis quality. And so therefore I dismissed it and just stopped playing. Noticing a theme here with this series of videos of mine? Dismissing these games without really giving them a fighting chance, just because they were different and resulted in me losing out on a lot of great experiences. And after replaying this game when it got released on the Nintendo Switch NSO expansion pack, I can say that I was absolutely wrong here. Obviously, Mega Man 1 through Mega Man 3 on the NES are the best comparisons to Wily Wars, since the latter is a remake of these NES games. I'm thinking Capcom saw what Nintendo did with Super Mario All-Stars and wanted to do that with their Blue Bomber mascot. In doing so, they did make a number of changes, for better and for worse, from the original entries. I recommend viewing the version differences listed on the Mega Man fandom wiki page that I will have a link to in the description. And I noticed a bunch of these during my gameplay. Many of these are anywhere from barely noticeable to being quite so. The biggest one probably is the change in damage that Robot Masters take from Mega Man's default Power Buster weapon. Perhaps a better comparison would be to Mega Man 7, which is Mega Man's first time on a Nintendo 16-bit console. I believe 7 features a much better music quality and a brighter color palette, but Mega Man 2 and 3 are just simply better games than 7 is. Again, 7, not bad. I'd give it an 8 out of 10, but 2 and 3 are near perfection. Again, both 10 out of 10 entries. Every time I booted up Wily Wars, I always had to change the controls in the in-game options menu. This is so that I could have the A button fire and B button jump. With my SNES controller, this allows me to use Y and B for these assignments respectively. Using this, Mega Man controlled phenomenally. Yes, the physics are different, but as a very seasoned Mega Man veteran, this surprisingly didn't take me long to get used to. One of the best tests for this is Mega Man 2's Quickman Industrial Laser section. I've always been able to complete this in the NES version without issue. Playing Wily Wars, I actually found this easier. I think the different physics has the lasers move slower, or maybe Mega Man felt quicker. Funny enough, while capturing footage for this video, I found myself beating this in Wily Wars immediately, yet I failed twice on my attempts on the NES version before finally nailing it on the third time. I should mention here about the Wily Tower section. Upon completing the first 3 remakes of Mega Man's 1 through 3, a new section called Wily Tower opens up. It's essentially a level select for 3 Robot Masters that Mega Man must fight, but doesn't gain any powers from, then 4 more levels as he explores another one of Dr. Wily's castles. This, surprisingly, was my favorite part of the game. Mega Man still has a slide from the third entry, but he also has the ability to select any of the 8 abilities he learned from these 3 entries. He can also select 3 of the 8 total support abilities from them as well. On my playthrough in this mode, this made me feel almost overpowered, especially as I traversed the new levels using abilities on enemies pulled directly from these 3 entries. It was cool to see what abilities worked on enemies that weren't from these games. But with the Metal Blade, Hard Knuckle, and Thunder Beam, along with the Rush Jet, my Mega Man was nigh unstoppable. As mentioned before, the Genesis features a darker color palette, though what Capcom did here for these games is pretty decent. The sprites look great, although it feels like the enemy and Robot Master sprites are just a little bit larger than their original NES counterparts. This is perhaps to enhance the overall detail for them all. The biggest winner here graphically has to be to the wonderful backgrounds in all of the stages. What was present on the original NES versions looks great for this system. Wily Wars took this and expanded enough to keep them familiar yet greater detailed. Kind of felt like visiting an old friend with a new look. Other stages that just had solid color backgrounds on the NES were given an aesthetic that matched the original level very well, such as in the second entry's 4th Dr. Wily stage. The overall music, however, is probably Wily Wars' weakest aspect, but again, keep in mind this may be because I'm a game music snob. The original NES Mega Man games had its music based on a limited chipset that allowed composer Takashi Taiteshi from the second entry to become very inventive in composing a killer soundtrack for said game. The Genesis doesn't have the same processing power as the SNES for music and thus it sounds quite tinny. Honestly, I quite prefer the original NES 8-bit chiptunes. I've heard YouTube musicians like Mega SFC and Bulby make remixes of various levels from the first 3 entries using the SNES music chipset, and these sound phenomenal. Links to both of these in the description. It makes me wish there was an SNES version of Wily Wars, if just to capture its musical capabilities. Sound effects themselves work well, although I feel there's less of an audible impact when it comes to damaging enemies and receiving damage in turn. What is given here works okay, but it lacks the same impact or oomph that the NES games had. Overall, I'm going to rate Mega Man The Wily Wars 8.5 SNES controllers out of 10. If this was on the SNES, taking advantage of its hardware, being a music snob, I'd probably have given it a 9.5 out of 10. Is this still my Nintendo fanboyism impacting the overall scoring? I suppose that's still possible. I think the overall presentation with being able to save progress on all the entries is great. Wily's Tower is also a great new addition, what with the stages feeling like Mega Man levels and being able to access all of the abilities from the first 3 entries. The darker palette works well for this entry, along with the more detailed sprites, and Mega Man continues to control great as well. I absolutely recommend playing this on Nintendo Switch's expansion pack NSO service. If you were lucky enough to get the Sega Genesis Mini with this as one of the 42 games on it, you should also play it through there as well. Capcom is doing an awesome job of putting together a number of Mega Man collections. We've got Mega Man numbers 1 through 10 on Legacy Collection 1 and 2, Mega Man X 1 through 8 on X Legacy Collection 1 and 2, and Mega Man 0/ZX collections. And there's also the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection coming in 2023 as well. All of these are or will be available on all current gen consoles and PC Steam. I'm hoping Capcom will continue this trend and put out more collections, like all the Game Boy games 1 through 5 on one. Maybe they'll even do a miscellaneous one with Wily Wars on it and add in stuff like Mega Man Soccer, Street Fighter X Mega Man, and even the Mega Man 1 and 3 DOS games. Hey, a Blue Bomber fan can dream, right? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more notifications. Thanks for watching and have a great day.